Okay, this third video, what I would like to cover very briefly, so this is going to be a short little video, short but sweet. What we're going to do is look at the two other tissue types. So there's four tissue types that we spoke of. The first one that we discussed was epithelial tissue. Let me just write these down. So epithelial tissue, those we said they cover organs, or they cover surfaces, they line spaces, they're avascular, they're highly regenerative. We based them on different sizes or different shapes. So there can be squamous, there's cuboidal, there's columnar, there's pseudostratified columnar, there's transitional. We've also named them based on the number of layers. So a single layer of cells would be simple, multiple layers would be stratified. Okay, so we've discussed epithelial tissue. We just went over the connective tissue. The connective tissue, and from connective tissue, we know that that was connective tissue proper. And connective tissue proper can be broken down into dense and loose. Dense connective tissue can be broken down into three subcategories: dense regular, dense irregular, and elastic. The loose can be broken down into also three subgroups, which is adipose, areolar, and reticular. The second category of connective tissue would be supporting. That can either be bone or cartilage. In bone, we have compact or spongy. The cartilage can be broken down into three different ones, which would be hyaline cartilage, the most common one, fibrocartilage, and elastic cartilage. And then the last category would be the fluid, which would be blood. Okay, so those are your different types of connective tissue. And the remaining two tissue types are going to be muscle and nervous tissue. Nervous tissue. Now, we're not going to spend much time on those because when we are in the muscular system chapter, we'll go through this in a much greater detail, or the nervous system chapter, we'll go through this in a much greater detail. So let's just do this as a primer for those. And let's first look at the muscle component on this one directly. So with muscle, there are going to be three different types of muscle tissue. You're going to have skeletal, you're going to have smooth, and you're going to have cardiac. Okay, so those are your three types of muscle tissue that we're looking at. That's a C at this end. That's a C. Okay, cardiac. So skeletal muscle very simply attaches to your skeletal system. So these types of muscles are going to be voluntary. Voluntary meaning I can voluntarily control it. If I tell my biceps to contract, I contract it, okay? So these are going to be voluntary. And let's just go straight across on each one of those. Smooth muscle is going to be involuntary, meaning you don't have control over how, if it contracts, when it contracts, or how fast it contracts, okay? Anybody who's had to go to the bathroom really, really bad realizes you have little control over, look, you have no control over smooth muscle contraction. You do have some skeletal muscle. When we get into the digestive system, we'll go into that detail. There's a little bit of skeletal muscle that can control. But you have no control over that. It moves when it does. You're going to see smooth muscle in your blood vessels. Okay, you can't tell your blood vessels to dilate or constrict. That does it automatically. And cardiac is also involuntary. You can't directly tell your heart to speed up or slow down. Now, you can you can forcibly use your skeletal muscle, jogging, let's say, and then that indirectly will increase your heart rate, but you are not telling your heart consciously to speed up. Okay? So those are that. So the next thing, the skeletal muscle is going to be called something that's striated. And striated, if you were to look at skeletal muscle underneath the microscopes, it has light and dark lines. Those light and dark lines are called striations. And when we look at the skeletal system, those are going to be parts of the muscle that deals with contraction. Okay, so in skeletal muscle, they're nice lined up, uniform pattern, so you can see them. Smooth muscle, non-striated. So if you were to look at under a microscope, you don't see those light and dark lines. You don't see those striations. Cardiac is striated. Okay. Skeletal muscle is multinucleated. Meaning each muscle cell has multiple nuclei attached to it. When we get into the muscular system, I'll explain how that happens. The smooth muscle has one nuclei. And cardiac will either have one or two nuclei per cardiac muscle. What else did I want to cover with this? I think that's basically it. And we're going to go under these in much more detail later on. So let's just really quick look at the nervous tissue. And nervous tissue comes in two flavors. There's the neuron. This is the functional component of the nervous system. This is what the nerve impulse is going to travel down or travel through, and that's going to be the neuron. Now you have a bunch of supporting cells that are called glial cells. These are the non-functional part. I don't want to say it's non-functional, but this is not, it doesn't send an electrical current down it, okay? The glial cells help to support the neuron to do its job, okay? So those are your basic components of the nervous system. On the next video, I'll bring up some histology, some different images that you can see. We'll start looking at the epithelial tissue and the different types of that. We'll look at the connective tissue, and we might even throw in a little bit of muscle and nerves for this. So for now, that's it for this one. Thank you.